How on earth could an entire community get to a point where they believed spectral demons were literally attacking their children? Well, to even begin to understand the Salem Witch Trials, you have to get inside the 17th century mind. And today, that's exactly what we're going to do. We're using the actual words of two of the most important people from that time, Cotton Mather and his own father, Increase Mather. So let's go back and see the evidence through their eyes.
For the Puritans in New England, this wasn't just some verse from the Bible. This was the headline news. They genuinely believed they were living in the end times, and that Satan, absolutely furious and running out of time, had come down to wage one last desperate war right in their own backyard. This feeling, this sense of immediate cosmic danger, that's the key to understanding everything that's about to happen.
So let's start with the problem as they saw it. They believed their little corner of the world was under a direct, terrifying, and personal attack from the devil himself.
To really get the Puritan mindset, you have to see them the way they saw themselves. They weren't just colonists setting up a town. No, they were building a chosen plantation, a kind of godly utopia in what they called the howling wilderness. And in their minds, creating this shining city on a hill made them a massive target. I mean, where would the devil show the most hatred? Well, right in the place where he was hated the most.
You can just feel the exhaustion and the desperation in Cotton Mather's words here, can't you? This wasn't some vague theological idea. It felt terrifyingly real, partly because their world was incredibly unstable. Think about it. They were dealing with the trauma of recent, bloody wars with Native Americans, their whole political system was in chaos, and they faced constant economic hardship. But they didn't see these as separate worldly problems. They saw them as a single, coordinated attack, all orchestrated by Satan.
So, if you're convinced you're under siege by the ultimate source of evil, what do? You don't just sit there, you fight back. And that's exactly what the colonists, led by thinkers like Cotton Mather, decided to do. They planned a spiritual counteroffensive.
Look, Cotton Mather didn't see himself as a villain or a persecutor. He saw himself as a general in a spiritual war. He actually wrote that his whole goal was to countermine the whole plot of the devil. From that point of view, the witch trials weren't an act of aggression. They were a necessary defensive action to expose and defeat the enemy's secret agents living among them.
And their number one weapon in this war was a new and frankly terrifying kind of testimony, specter evidence. Now get this, an accuser could claim that your spirit, your specter, left your body and was pinching, biting, or tormenting them, even while your physical body was miles away with plenty of witnesses. This idea, this specter evidence, became the very legal foundation of the trials.
All right, so with specter foot evidence as the centerpiece, the court started gathering what it considered to be solid, undeniable proof of guilt. So let's take a look at what that evidence actually was.
Just try to imagine being a judge in that courtroom. Young girls convulsing on the floor, screaming in what looks like genuine agony, and they're pointing to an empty spot in the room, crying out the name of your neighbor. That's what specter evidence sounded like. In the supercharged, paranoid atmosphere of Salem, it must have been incredibly convincing.
But it wasn't just spectral testimony. The court built its cases on all kinds of other so-called proofs. Examiners would physically search the accused's body for a devil's mark. They'd use psychological tests, like asking the accused to recite the Lord's Prayer, believing a real witch couldn't do it without stumbling. And maybe most importantly, confessions, often forced out of people under extreme pressure, were used to condemn not just them, but anyone else they named.
So with this system of evidence up and running, the convictions started to pile up. And for a moment, it must have felt like the countervine was working. The enemy was being exposed, the plot was being stopped, and God's plantation was finally being made safe. And then a single horrifying thought started to creep in. A question that threatened to bring the entire legal and moral foundation of the trials crashing down. What if the devil was playing them? What if he could frame an innocent person? This huge, world-shattering doubt was most powerfully voiced by, of all people, Cotton Mather's own father, the highly respected minister Increase Mather. He started to argue that the court's greatest weapon, specter evidence, might actually be a trap set by the devil himself.
So Increase Mather, being a top scholar, he went all the way back to the early church fathers to make his case. He pulled out this quote from Lactantius, which basically says, demons can make things that are not real appear as if they are. In other words, he was arguing that the visions of these afflicted girls might not be a window into the truth. They might just be illusions, special effects projected into their minds by the devil.
Increase Mather used the Bible itself to dismantle the whole logic of the prosecution. He reminded everyone that Scripture says Satan can appear as an angel of light, that a demon once took the shape of the holy prophet Samuel, that the devil is literally called the accuser of the brethren. His final question was just devastating. If the court accepts a vision from a specter as the truth, who are they really trusting? The afflicted girl or the devil who is creating her vision?
This just created an impossible crisis. The very evidence they were using to prove who was guilty was now being suspected as a demonic trick. Let's look at how these two worldviews just smashed into each other. So here it is, the heart of the whole conflict. On one side, you've got Cotton Mather and the court. They're arguing that these trials are a necessary defense against a flood of evil, and that the afflicted are seeing the true shapes of their attackers. But on the other side, you have Increase Mather's chilling warning. Spectral evidence is basically the devil's testimony, and it has no place in a human court. And he concludes with a line that has echoed through legal history ever since. It is better that 10 suspected witches escape than that one innocent person be condemned. And there you have it. The paradox was complete. The method they had invented to expose the devil's plot was now seen as a potential tool of that very plot. By trying so hard to defeat Satan, they ran the risk of becoming his unwitting executioners, condemning innocent people based on the word of a demon. And that leaves us with the question that ultimately unraveled the Salem Witch Trials, a question that is, frankly, just as powerful today. When you are absolutely sure that you're fighting a great evil, how do you protect yourself from the terrifying possibility that your own certainty is the most dangerous weapon of all?